So Philip Green makes an almost pantomime villain.
Welcome to WatchMojo UK, and today we're looking at times one person or a small group of people destroyed companies, either by bankrupting them or ruining their reputations.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Ted Baker means everything to me, and I can't bear to see it harmed in any way.
Number 8. Michael Christopher Woodford. For 2 weeks, Woodford, a Brit who grew up in Liverpool, was the CEO of Olympus, a huge Japanese corporation.
I think, Maggie, we're still a long way from getting all the answers we need.
Woodford had already been working at the company for months, but after 2 weeks in the top job, he was ousted. Woodford later exposed Olympus, revealing that the reason he was made to leave was that he found evidence that the corporation was in the pocket of organised crime groups in Japan, and that it had been covering up its financial losses.
I was fired because I released the PwC report and asked for the resignation of Kikukawa and Mori.
All of this unfolded in 2011, leading to Woodford fearing for his life, but eventually winning lawsuits against his former employers for wrongful dismissal.
Michael, you just said we're only beginning to scratch the surface, and even this initial report won't tell us everything we need to know. What does that mean for Olympus, the company?
He's since gone on to advocate for protections for whistleblowers, and while Olympus has survived, many of its executives served prison sentences. The company has also faced lawsuits from half a dozen banks and was fined 700 million yen by the Japanese government.
I mean, Olympus will survive because its underlying businesses are so strong. In what eventual form, I think, remains unclear.
Number 7. Azil Nadier.
This was the moment last week when a fugitive returned to the UK saying he'd come back to clear his name.
Under Nadier, textile manufacturer and fashion house Polly Peck became one of the most lucrative companies in the world, all in just a few years. He took over in 1980, but over 10 years later, was nowhere to be found.
When he fled Britain, his reputation was in tatters and he'd left a trail of debt. Now both Nadier and his nearest associates claim he was framed in an international conspiracy.
He'd actually fled the entire country and had run to Cyprus, having generated over £1 billion in debt ahead of the total collapse of the company. For nearly 20 years he lived in Cyprus as a fugitive, though willingly returned to London in 2010, pleading not guilty to the various offences he was charged with and dragging out a trial.
At its peak, Nadier's Polypec was one of the world's major conglomerates with assets from clothing to fruit.
He was, however, sentenced to 10 years in prison on theft charges, found guilty of stealing tens of millions. He served less than 4 years, however, and it was eventually negotiated that he'd be transferred to a Turkish prison in 2016, only to be immediately released after 24 hours in custody there. For the rest of his life, he lived in Cyprus again.
But that doesn't suit Nadier. He wants his day in court to prove to the world he's not a multi-million-pound fraudster.
Number 6. Matt Ridley and Adam Applegarth.
Good evening. Thousands of customers have been queuing up outside branches of the troubled mortgage lender Northern Rock to withdraw their money.
Could they have seen this coming? It's not clear, but some people did. And the Northern Rock crisis did happen shortly before the collapse of Lehman Brothers the following year. Under Ridley and Applegarth, much of Northern Rock's business involved buying and selling mortgages, which, given the looming subprime mortgage crisis, doomed the bank.
These fears followed news that the nation's fifth largest mortgage lender had to negotiate an emergency loan with the Bank of England.
Their mismanagement, though Applegarth got most of the blame, led to a catastrophic bank run after the government stepped in to bail it out. It was eventually renationalised and years later divided and sold on. Ridley was made to resign first, and eventually Applegarth followed, with the FSA blaming the failure and crisis on the management specifically.
Way past normal closing time, on a Friday night, the Harrow branch of Northern Rock still open this evening, dealing with queues of people waiting to withdraw their money.
Years later, and a whole generation of Brits remain haunted by the memory of people queuing up during Northern Rock's bank runs, a sign of worse financial crises to come.
The run on the Rock was a jarring moment for borrowers, for savers, for the politicians and the regulators. It was an extraordinary moment in modern British history.
Number 5. Anita Rodic.
Almost half a century of the body shop history on our high streets is hanging in the balance tonight.
She was the visionary founder of The Body Shop, a humble and cruelty-free cosmetic chain initially launched in Brighton back in the 70s.
All you need is a sort of a vision of an idea and finding people to expedite that vision and make it happen.
But she made many questionable decisions during her time helming the company and brand, including at one point suing Bath & Body Works in the US. This was ironic, since years later there would be an expose claiming that Rodic had copied everything about The Body Shop from a similar company in the US, including the name. She ended up having to pay that company to change its name when The Body Shop expanded into the US market.
The Body Shop's first shop was opened in Brighton in 1976. The late Anita Rodic championed fair trade consumerism, and the business thrived.
Eventually, she made a huge profit selling The Body Shop to L'Oreal, which in itself was controversial, given L'Oreal's ethical track record. She passed away in 2007, and the chain changed hands over and over, going into administration in the UK in 2024 after many years of financial problems.
The Body Shop is bust, in administration and unable to pay its bills as they fall due.
Number 4. Ray Kelvin.
Ray Kelvin is to temporarily leave his job as boss of the fashion firm Ted Baker, after further serious allegations emerged about his conduct.
For a while, Kelvin was the CEO of Ted Baker, formerly a high street clothing shop and now only selling its products online. But a huge scandal in 2018 led to him leaving the company, albeit temporarily. It was alleged that he behaved inappropriately at work, often demanding forced hugs from the employees.
But this week, more and more who've worked for the secretive owner have spoken of forced hugging, inappropriate behaviour and harassment.
All in all, 300 of them signed a petition backing the allegations, leading to him going on leave and then eventually resigning, only to come back in 2020 as an advisor.
Ted Baker has been my life and soul for 30 years. I love this company and I care deeply for all my colleagues.
But a lot of damage to the brand had been done, with various other executives leaving. It didn't survive the pandemic and ultimately shut for good in 2024.
Tuesday's announcement ends months of speculation about the fate of the British fashion group.
Number 3. The Wilkinsons.
Wilko has been in business for more than 90 years, but now the discount retailer that caters to the cost-conscious has been squeezed into administration itself.
From the beginning, household chain Wilko was owned by the Wilkinsons, who founded it and gave it their name. But the company began to get into trouble in the 2010s. It eventually wound up controlled by Tony and Lisa Wilkinson and fell into dire straits, at one point cutting 4,000 jobs, while the Wilkinson family took home £3 million in dividends.
The family-owned business paid a £3 million dividend to its shareholders last year, despite a £36 million loss, leaving unions blaming management.
In fact, they kept getting these massive dividends even as more stores closed and more jobs were lost, with the entire brand falling into administration.
Good morning. Well, of course, Wilko's is a familiar sight on so many high streets in the UK. Yesterday came that news that many employees had been dreading, that the company was being put into administration.
Some of them were rescued by B&M and Poundland, but many remain desolate years later, with huge job losses, though the brand's products still exist in other retailers. It's clear that not all companies should remain family businesses when things like this happen. Maybe they shouldn't have taken all those dividends while shedding thousands of workers.
Now the announcement came from the chief executive yesterday as he took that decision to put it into administration.
Number 2, Nick Leeson.
It's very easy for me to get on with people, but I don't necessarily have to like you or any of the people that I work with to get on with them.
Founded in 1762, at the time of its demise, Barings Bank was the oldest merchant bank in the UK. But all of that changed in the 1990s when one man, Nick Leeson, took it upon himself to destroy the company via extensive fraud. Leeson worked his way up the ranks of banking after starting as a humble clerk, eventually amassing the experience to work in derivatives.
It wasn't a money thing. I could have stayed at Morgan Stanley for an extra $5,000, but you know, if they've stopped me doing something once, who's to say they're not going to do it again?
And then he started making massive unauthorised trades, covering up the losses he made while earning bonuses for the profits. Eventually, he ran up losses of over £800 million and went on the run, only getting caught in Germany. He was extradited back to Singapore, where he'd been working, and served over 4 years in prison after pleading guilty. Barings collapsed completely.
At Barings, they had a lot of idiots, basically in every one of the controlling functions.
Today, Leeson is largely reformed and has worked as an investigator for serious financial crime, putting his expertise to good use elsewhere. Number 1. Sir Philip Green.
But that was then. Now BHS is in administration, led there by a man who's been bankrupt 3 times.
Just how many companies has Sir Philip Green destroyed through gross mismanagement? Dozens, probably. Through many aggressive acquisitions, Green tried to eat up as many high street retailers as possible, eventually counting Topshop, Topman, Dorothy Perkins, and of course, British Home Stores in his portfolio.
What has never before been revealed is that 2 years ago, Sir Philip Green planned a massive restructuring of BHS called Project Thor.
After various controversies, from tax avoidance to allegedly refusing to pay the minimum wage, he eventually got the attention of the House of Commons after running BHS into the ground. All the brick and mortar shops shut in 2016, with Arcadia Group itself going into administration 5 years later.
A firm with a 242-year history, reduced to relying on a last-minute deal to save it. And today, that deal fell apart.
This led to the closure of iconic high street department store Debenhams, because Arcadia was trying to rescue it from insolvency at the time. The government even tried to strip him of his knighthood because of all this, though was unsuccessful. He unfortunately remains Sir Philip Green.
10,000 people have money in the Arcadia pension pot, a fund with an estimated £350 million deficit.
Let us know if you miss any of these bankrupt companies.
It's the thing of letting people down. I just can't do it.